The church buzzed with excitement as Daisy's dream wedding unfolded, her second chance at happiness finally within reach. When the pastor asked if anyone objected, no one expected 12-year-old Abigail to rise from the front row. As the young girl rolled up her sleeve and began to speak, the bride's radiant smile vanished completely. The church stood elegantly decorated, white lilies and roses adorning every corner, creating an atmosphere of pure romance and celebration. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the wooden pews filled with excited guests. Everyone was dressed in their finest attire, eagerly anticipating the union about to take place. Daisy had spent months planning this perfect day. At 38, she believed this was her second chance at happiness after years of raising her children alone. As the music swelled, she took her first steps down the aisle, clutching her bouquet with trembling hands. Her eyes remained fixed on Williams, the man who had swept into her life like a whirlwind just 4 months earlier. He stood tall at the altar, his expensive, tailored suit emphasizing his broad shoulders. His warm smile radiated happiness as he watched his bride approach, his eyes filled with apparent adoration. Everyone in attendance could feel the love between them, a picture-perfect couple about to start their new life together. In the front row sat Abigail and Joshua, Daisy's children. 12-year-old Abigail fidgeted with the sleeve of her bridesmaid dress, repeatedly pulling it down over her arm. Next to her, 9-year-old Joshua stared at his shoes, refusing to look up at the ceremony unfolding before them. Their faces carried shadows that seemed out of place amid the joyous occasion, but everyone was too focused on the radiant bride to notice the children's discomfort. The romance between Daisy and Williams had progressed with astonishing speed. Just weeks after meeting each other, they became inseparable. Williams charmed everyone in Daisy's circle, including her protective parents and skeptical friends. When he proposed after just 3 months, it felt like the culmination of a fairy tale. No one questioned the speed of their relationship. They seemed perfect together. Williams was the model of a caring stepfather-to-be. He attended Joshua's soccer games and listened patiently to Abigail's piano recitals. He took them for ice cream and asked about their school days. Everyone commented on how lucky Daisy was to find a man who embraced her children so completely. As the CEO of her family's company, Daisy often had evening meetings and corporate functions to attend. Williams had suggested that hiring a nanny was unnecessary when he was perfectly capable of watching the children himself. Daisy had been touched by his willingness to bond with her children, never suspecting that anything might be amiss in her perfect new family unit. Now, as Daisy reached the altar, Williams took her hands in his. Then came the moment that is often just a formality in modern weddings. The pastor looked out at the congregation and asked solemnly if anyone could show just cause why this couple could not lawfully be joined together in matrimony. He paused as tradition dictated, expecting the customary silence. The church grew still. But then, a small movement disrupted the perfect tableau. From the front row, Abigail slowly rose to her feet. Her small frame trembled visibly as she gathered her courage. Abigail called out to her mother, her voice cracking with emotion as she declared that her mom couldn't marry Williams. The sound echoed through the stunned church, bouncing off the high ceilings and causing every head to turn toward the source. Daisy turned away from the altar, her face transforming from blissful happiness to utter confusion. Williams maintained his composure, though his charming smile faltered slightly at the corners. What would make a 12-year-old girl interrupt her mother's wedding? Was this simply the jealousy that sometimes affects children when parents remarry? The congregation held their breath, waiting to understand this unexpected development. Abigail continued, her voice growing stronger as she revealed that Williams was only interested in Daisy's money. The accusation hung heavy in the air, shocking everyone present. The wedding guests began to murmur among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others leaning forward in curiosity. Williams immediately tried to defuse the situation. He spoke calmly to Daisy, suggesting that her daughter was simply having a hard time adjusting to their blended family. But Abigail wasn't finished. She began to explain what had led to her desperate intervention. 2 weeks earlier, she had been walking past Williams' home office when she overheard him speaking on the phone. His voice had been different from what she'd ever heard before, calculated and cold. She described how he had spoken about gaining access to everything once they were married, mentioning plans to escape to Bali with someone he called Baby. He had told this mystery person that Daisy wouldn't know what hit her. The congregation gasped collectively. Was this simply a child's imagination or misunderstanding? Or was there truth behind these serious allegations? Abigail described how Williams had caught her listening that day. He had warned her that her mother would never believe her over him, suggesting that any accusations would be dismissed as jealousy. The young girl revealed the most frightening part of her story. That very night, Williams had locked both her and Joshua in the basement for hours as punishment. They had sat in the dark, terrified, as he warned them about worse consequences if they ever spoke up about what they had heard or how he treated them when their mother wasn't around. But the most damning evidence was still to come. Abigail explained that just that morning, while Daisy was getting her hair and makeup done for the wedding, Williams had cornered her again. He had grabbed her arm and squeezed hard, reinforcing his threat that she shouldn't ruin the wedding for everyone. With the entire church watching in stunned silence, Abigail rolled up the sleeve of her dress. There on her arm was a fresh bruise, the unmistakable pattern of fingerprints visible against her pale skin. The evidence was impossible to dismiss. Beside her, Joshua finally found his courage. He nodded in confirmation, adding that what his sister said was true. Williams tried desperately to maintain control of the situation. He insisted that the children were making up stories, suggesting that perhaps Abigail had hurt herself and was blaming him. He appealed to Daisy's rationality, reminding her of their perfect relationship and the future they had planned together. But Daisy was no longer listening to Williams. She stared transfixed at the bruise on her daughter's arm, recognizing the shape of a hand. All the color drained from her face as the implications of what her children were saying sank in. The man she thought she knew, the man she had been about to commit her life to, was a complete stranger. Daisy took one step back from Williams and then another. Her voice trembled but carried clearly through the church as she announced that the wedding was off. Williams' carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. His charming expression contorted into one of rage as he realized his plans were falling apart. He reached for Daisy's wrist and snarled that she was making a mistake, that she would regret letting a good man like him go. His true nature now fully exposed, Williams began to storm toward the exit, pushing past shocked guests. But as he reached the doors of the church, he found his path blocked. 2 police officers stood in the doorway, their expressions grim. As the officers approached Williams, the full impact of his actions seemed to hit him. His shoulders slumped as the handcuffs were placed on his wrists. In the midst of this chaos, Daisy walked towards her children. She wrapped her arms around them, pulling them close as tears streamed down her face. Daisy told her children that she would always love them and would never trade them for anyone else. Her voice broke with emotion as she promised that she would always believe them and protect them, always. What would you have done if you were in Abigail's shoes? Would you have found the courage to speak up, even when threatened?